She signed the divorce papers, thinking the hardest part was over. But 3 months later, she realized she didn't even understand her own life anymore.
That sounds deeper than just a breakup.
It is, and that's exactly why this story stayed with me. Because when most people think about divorce, they imagine the emotional side. The arguments, the heartbreak, the silence after everything ends. But that's not what broke her. And that's the part that made me stop and really think.
So what actually happened?
This isn't my story, but it's someone I know. A woman who was married for over 10 years. From the outside, everything looked stable. Not perfect, but steady. No dramatic fights, no obvious signs of collapse. Just a normal life that made sense to everyone around them. They had a system, a structure that worked.
What kind of structure?
He handled the money, everything related to finances, income, bills, savings, investments. He was the one who understood it. And she didn't question it. Not because she didn't care, but because it felt logical. He was better at it, faster, more confident. And honestly, it made life easier.
So she trusted him.
Completely. And that trust didn't feel risky. It felt responsible. Like they were dividing roles in a smart way. He takes care of the financial side. She focuses on everything else. And for years, it worked. At least on the surface. Welcome to MTP MindTalk Podcast. My name is Emma.
And I'm Alex.
And today, I want to walk through this story with you. Because what makes this situation uncomfortable is how normal it feels at the beginning. There were no red flags. No hidden arguments about money. No signs that something was wrong. Everything was being paid. Life was moving forward. And when things are working like that, you don't stop to ask questions. You don't think about what you don't see. You just assume it's all under control.
Until it's not.
Exactly. The relationship ended. Not in a dramatic way. Just one of those endings that feels inevitable in hindsight. And for the first time, she had to step into the financial side of her own life. Not as a partner, but as the only person responsible. And that's when something shifted. Not emotionally, but mentally. Because she realized something that didn't hit her during the marriage. She didn't actually know how her life worked.
That's a scary realization.
It is. Because it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments. Looking at accounts she didn't recognize. Numbers she didn't understand. Decisions she didn't know how to make. And slowly, that confusion turned into something heavier. Not panic, but awareness. The kind that makes you question everything that felt normal before. And that's where this story really begins. Not with the divorce, but with what came after it. Stay with me. Because what she discovered next wasn't just about money. It was about something much harder to rebuild. And that awareness we ended with, it didn't hit her all at once. It unfolded slowly, in ways that felt almost ordinary at first.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, it didn't start with a crisis. It started with small, quiet moments that didn't seem important until they added up. The first time she logged into an account on her own. The first time she had to call the bank and explain something she didn't fully understand. The first time she looked at numbers and realized they didn't mean anything to her.
That's a different kind of pressure.
It is, because it's not dramatic. No one sees it happening. But internally, it creates a kind of instability. She told me, I felt like I was standing in my own life, but I didn't know how anything worked.
That's a powerful statement.
It is, and the more she tried to figure things out, the more she noticed something deeper. It wasn't just that she didn't understand the finances. It was that she had never been part of the decision-making process. Not really. She was informed sometimes, updated occasionally, but never involved.
So she was present, but not included.
Exactly. And that distinction became very clear to her after the divorce. Because now, every decision required her input. And she didn't have a framework to rely on. No habits. No experience. No confidence. Just responsibility.
That sounds overwhelming.
It is, and here's where it becomes more complex. She didn't feel like something had been taken from her. She felt like something had been missing all along. And that's a very different realization.
Because it changes how you see the past.
Exactly. She started looking back at their marriage differently. Not in terms of love or connection, but in terms of structure. Who made decisions? Who asked questions? Who understood what was happening? And who didn't? And she realized something that made her uncomfortable. I thought I was sharing a life, but I was only managing the parts I could see.
That's a hard truth to sit with.
It is. Because now the story isn't just about divorce. It's about awareness. And once that awareness appears, it changes how you interpret everything. Every past conversation starts to feel incomplete. Every decision starts to feel one-sided. Not because someone was trying to control everything, but because control was never questioned.
So what she thought was stability was actually dependency.
Yes. And that's the part that really stayed with me. Dependency doesn't always feel like weakness when you're inside it. It feels like convenience. It feels like trust. It feels like things are handled. But the moment you have to stand on your own, you realize how much of your life you never actually held. And that realization doesn't come with anger first. It comes with uncertainty, the kind that makes you hesitate before every decision, the kind that makes you question yourself, even in simple situations. And that's when she understood something she had never thought about before. Not knowing is not neutral. It has consequences. And now, she had to face all of them. And facing those consequences, that's when things stopped feeling abstract and became very real.
Real in what way?
In the kind of way where every decision suddenly carries weight. Not emotional weight, financial weight. The kind that affects where you live, what you can afford, how secure you feel, day to day. She told me there was a moment that changed everything for her.
What happened?
She had to make a simple decision. Something most people wouldn't think twice about. Whether she could afford to stay in her current place or if she needed to move. And for the first time, she couldn't answer that question confidently.
That must have been scary.
It was. Because it wasn't just about the decision itself. It was about what the hesitation revealed. She realized she didn't trust her own judgment. Not because she wasn't capable, but because she had never been in that position before. And that's when the pressure really started to build. Not from outside, from within.
What kind of pressure?
The pressure of knowing that every mistake now would be hers. Every wrong move, every missed detail, every decision she didn't fully understand. There was no one else to rely on. And that kind of responsibility doesn't just feel heavy. It feels isolating.
So this is where things really broke for her.
Yes. Not in one moment, but over time, because she started to notice a pattern in her own behavior. She hesitated before making decisions. She double-checked everything. She avoided things she didn't fully understand. Not because she didn't want to deal with them, but because she was afraid of getting them wrong.
That sounds like more than just financial stress.
It is. It's a loss of confidence. And that's what made this so difficult. Because confidence isn't something you can rebuild instantly, especially when you're learning under pressure. And here's the part that really stayed with me. She said, I wasn't just learning about money. I was learning how to trust myself again.
That's powerful.
It is. Because this wasn't just about numbers anymore. It became about identity. Who she was without that structure. Without someone else making the decisions. Without the safety of not needing to know. And that shift is what made everything feel overwhelming. Because starting over isn't just about building something new. It's about realizing how much you never built in the first place.
That's a hard truth to face.
It is. And I think this is where a lot of people misunderstand situations like this. They think the hardest part is losing the relationship. But sometimes, the hardest part is facing the parts of your life you gave up without noticing. And having to rebuild them from nothing. And that's when she understood something clearly. The divorce didn't take away her stability. It revealed that her stability was never really hers to begin with. And once she realized that her stability was never really hers, she had a choice to make, even if it didn't feel like one at the time.
What kind of choice?
Not a big dramatic one. Not something like, I'm going to fix everything. It was smaller than that. More personal. She had to decide how she was going to see her past.
You mean how she interpreted what happened?
Exactly. Because it would have been very easy to turn this into a story about blame. To say, he controlled everything. He didn't include me. He made all the decisions. And for a while, she did think that. Not in an angry way. Just in a way that helped her make sense of the situation.
That seems natural.
It is. But then, something shifted. And this is the part that really stayed with me. She said, I don't think he took control. I think I gave it up.
That's a very different perspective.
It is. And it's not easy to arrive at that conclusion. Because it forces you to look at your own role in the situation. Not with blame, but with honesty. And that's uncomfortable.
So she stopped seeing herself as a victim.
Not completely, but she stopped seeing the situation as one-sided. She started to recognize that the system they had worked for both of them in different ways. He took control because he was comfortable with it. She stepped back because it felt easier, less stressful, more efficient. And over time, that arrangement became permanent. Not because it was discussed, but because it was never questioned.
So the real issue wasn't just control.
It was the absence of awareness. And that's the twist in this story. There was no moment where something clearly went wrong. No single decision that caused everything to fall apart. Just a pattern, repeated over years. One person handling more, the other person stepping back. Until that dynamic became the foundation of their entire life. And once that foundation was removed, everything else felt unstable.
That makes the situation harder to blame on one person.
Exactly. And I think that's why this story feels so real. Because it's not extreme. It's not unusual. It's something a lot of people live inside without noticing. And here's what I kept thinking about while she was telling me this. Control doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it looks like competence. Sometimes it looks like, I'll take care of it. And dependence doesn't always feel like dependence. Sometimes it feels like trust. Sometimes it feels like relief. And that's what makes it so easy to miss. Because when everything feels normal, you don't stop to ask what it's costing you. Until one day, you have to carry it on your own. And that's when the truth becomes clear. Not all at once, but enough that you can't ignore it anymore. And once that truth becomes clear, you don't suddenly fix everything. You just start seeing differently.
Seeing what exactly?
Yourself, your pattern, the choices you didn't realize you were making. And for her, that was the beginning of something new. Not a fresh start in the way people usually imagine, but a more conscious one.
What changed for her?
She stopped trying to feel ready. And started acting, even when she wasn't. Small things at first. Sitting down with her finances every week. Asking questions she used to avoid. Taking time to understand what she was doing instead of rushing past it. And I think that's important because growth didn't come from confidence. It came from repetition.
That's a different way to look at it.
Yeah. She told me, I didn't become confident first. I became consistent. And over time, that consistency changed how she felt. Not overnight, but gradually. The hesitation didn't disappear completely, but it became manageable. The fear didn't go away, but it stopped controlling every decision.
So she rebuilt that sense of control.
Yes, but in a different way. Not based on someone else handling things, but based on her own understanding, even if it was imperfect. And that's the part I keep coming back to. She didn't rebuild the same life. She built a different relationship with it. One where she was involved, aware, present in the decisions that shaped her reality.
That sounds more stable in the long run.
It is. Because now, her stability isn't dependent on someone else's knowledge. It comes from her own participation. And I think that's what makes this story meaningful. Not the divorce, not the struggle, but the shift from not knowing to choosing to understand. And here's the truth that stayed with me after all of this. Stability is not something you're given. It's something you stay connected to. Because the moment you disconnect from it, even for good reasons, you risk losing more than you realize. And rebuilding that connection takes time. But it's possible, as long as you're willing to step into it, even when it feels uncomfortable. When I think about her story now, I don't think the divorce was the turning point. It was the moment she realized she had been living inside something she didn't fully understand.
Not the relationship, but the system around it.
Exactly. Because relationships don't just shape how we feel. They shape how we function. And sometimes we don't notice what we've handed over to someone else until we have to take it back. And here's what stayed with me the most. She didn't fall apart when the marriage ended. She fell apart when she realized how disconnected she had been from her own life.
That's a different kind of loss.
It is. And it's quiet. There's no clear moment where it breaks. It just becomes visible. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Looking back, I think the real lesson here is not about divorce. It's about awareness, about staying connected to the parts of your life that matter, even when someone else is handling them well. Because comfort can be misleading. It can make you step back slowly without realizing what you're giving up.
So it's not about control, it's about involvement.
Yes! Exactly that. You don't need to control everything, but you need to understand it. And that's something we often ignore, especially in long-term relationships. So here are 3 things I think are worth holding on to. First, never confuse convenience with stability. Just because something feels easy doesn't mean it's secure. Second, stay involved in the decisions that affect your life, even if you're not the one leading them. Ask questions. Understand the process. Be part of it. And third, don't wait for a crisis to learn what you should have known earlier. Learning under pressure is possible, but it's much harder than learning by choice.
That's something people don't think about enough.
Yeah. And if there's one sentence that summarizes this entire story for me, it's this. The divorce didn't break her. The distance from her own life did. Now I want to ask you something simple. In your current situation, are you fully aware of how your finances work? A, yes. B, no. C, not really sure. Just answer honestly in the comments. Your answer might help someone else realize something they've been avoiding.
And we read those comments.
We really do. And if this episode made you think or see your situation a little differently, please subscribe to MTP, MindTalk Podcast. That's how you support us. And help us keep creating real, honest stories like this.
More conversations that actually matter.
Always. Thank you for being here. Take care of what you're responsible for and stay connected to your own life.
We'll see you in the next episode.
See you next time.